All right. So Amazon, by the way, is planning to open a large retail locations that resemble department stores. So like, I guess like the Bay or something like that across North America. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. Brian Borzakowski, a freelance business journalist, was on the Mike Smith show earlier. And one of the questions I asked was, could this disrupt small businesses even more?
It's hard. I think a lot of the companies that have run into trouble over the last year and a half and before were already into trouble. They were already in debt. They weren't sort of running their business, in maybe the best way. Sears is a good example of that. They're not keeping up with the times, and so some of these businesses were already in trouble, and COVID just accelerated that. I think, companies are, as always, really are going to have to make sure they're running tight operations, that they're not over-levered in debt, and that they're continuing to provide good service and good products. And that's no different than any other business. So I think, yes, people are definitely gravitating more online. I don't think walking into a store is disappearing anytime soon. And the companies that are going to be left standing are the ones that are going to operate their business best and know their customers. And that's really business fundamentals 101. And, companies will drop off, new companies will come. But saying all that, for sure, it's tougher than it was, 20 years ago or 10 years ago. But that doesn't mean these businesses are going away.
That was Brian Borzakowski. He's a freelance business journalist. And, the juggernaut that is Amazon is kind of like Google and Facebook and what they've done to a lot of traditional news media outlets like radio and TV and print. Joining me now is Chris Sims. She's from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. And, she and I share a lot of views, I think, on where the government might play in this. But let's talk about this. Hey, Chris, are you there?
Yes, I am. It's nice to be here on your last afternoon day.
the last of the afternoons until it becomes the Jazz Joel show. So, Chris, you heard that clip. It's true, and I'm a market economist. Kind of, I believe in the market economy. But are we doing things right? Are we letting Amazon and these organizations really infiltrate the private sector and really kill small business? Is this a good thing?
Well, it's a good question. Just as a human being, it's my observation. Isn't it interesting how things come full circle? Weren't we told for years and years that brick and mortar are disappearing? I used to marvel at how Eaton struggled, to adjust to online shopping when they kind of invented it with catalog shopping.
Yeah, Sears too, yeah.
Exactly. Hey guys, who's good at mail order shopping? It should be those two juggernauts,
They
right?
lost it.
Exactly. Just couldn't do it. And here, isn't it kind of neat? We've come full circle that Amazon is actually putting down roots, and I'm allowed to go in and touch and look at things that I want to shop at. We speak with small businesses often, as does, of course, the CFIB. And we've actually heard that small businesses, especially in British Columbia, have felt more and more confident, which is good. Apparently, it's been 7 straight months of upticks in confidence, and that's because our restrictions were never as severe as they were across the rest of Canada, and our economy relatively has bounced back sooner. And so most small businesses in these cases have already adjusted to Amazon. They're used to having them as that online giant, and they're already niche and specialty stores. So if you go into, say, a special gift shop that's in the heart of downtown Vancouver and it specializes in really cool BC items, how is that really going to change with Amazon being able to be walked into down the street? I'm not sure.
The challenge, though, is that Amazon has deep pockets to pay for the best locations. And you know, that one of the biggest challenges for brick and mortar small business is the taxes and the cost of finding a space that you can afford. And you look at what's happening in Vancouver, and this is not an attack on Amazon. They have this giant building that they're taking over where the post office used to be. There's going to be lots of staff working there. They're putting retail in there. There's other stuff going in there. But, it's not going to be cheap, and it's certainly impacting a lot of the areas around it. So it's kind of like the small towns back in the day when the retailers, when the big malls came in and killed the downtown cores. And because they could afford to build fancy buildings, they could afford to pay the higher taxes, these small guys are going, I can't. And it's like I'm literally marginal at the best, and taxes are what kill me.
Great question, and it's a good comparison, too. I spent a lot of my teen years in Courtenay Comox, and I remember distinctly one of my first radio jobs was at the Eagle over there, and when Walmart was opening, it was a huge deal. And actually, if you go back now to the main streets there of their little shopping district, it's booming. It's thriving. still. And so hopefully from that element of competition and driving traffic and that sort of thing, they'll thrive. But you make a great point on taxes, and I've noticed this myself. So growing up in the Fraser Valley here, I used to go to Vancouver all the time as a kid. And now it seems, especially in the downtown core, that it's only these kind of big box and big company stores that can afford the taxes. And one of the reasons why is because we have this weird best use policy that is allowed for with business taxes. And for people who are listening that don't know, it basically goes like this. Say you are a single-story Mexican restaurant and you've been on your same corner in Kitsilano now for a long time, many, many years. Single-story restaurant. Now, unfortunately, you aren't just taxed as what you are. You're taxed at what a bureaucrat thinks you could be. So you're taxed as if you are a mixed-use 8 to 8-story condo tower.
Invisible space.
Totally. You're on the air above your head. And so that's where things really start getting weird, because a big company can just say, okay, that's strange. I'll just eat it and pay that tax.
Or I'll build the building and put the 5 stories there.
Exactly. Whereas the small business owner, whether they own the building or not, they're usually the one paying the taxes, because often the leaseholder will actually pay the taxes on it. That's something where a small business and independent business is at a decided disadvantage. And so that's where, the premier, the province, and the cities really need to step in and stop doing that.
It's like, okay, this is a city taxes, but they can't actually change what you're describing. Their taxation structure by a city is mandated by the provincial government, and it's a province that needs to change the rules, right?
Yes, exactly.
So when are they going to do that? Come on, what's the holdup?
Exactly. It's as if sometimes they don't know how the phone works or how to send an email. Yeah. These folks all know each other, and they've been in government a long time. And I was just talking to elected politicians. The bureaucrats have been in this game a long time. They should have figured this out years ago. And so, when you're comparing a giant like Amazon versus Joe and Mary's, small gift shop, you're right. It's the Joe and Mary that's at a disadvantage.
All right, Chris, I thank you for joining me today. Keep fighting the good fight on the taxation, especially for small business. Clearly they need it if Amazon's making its inroads into Canada.
Amen, and thank you for all your great work on the air.
Thanks, Chris.